everybody, welcome back to another episode of Committed Critics, the pop culture podcast where we're not only committed to our opinions, but also each other.
Yay!
No.
So as you can probably hear, there are no men in this episode right now. Kevin, Ryan, and Zach are all gone because, like men, the only thing they have is the audacity. No, that is not my joke. I got it from TikTok, but it's fine. So I am here. Hi, Jordan Smearman. I've been on a couple of podcast episodes before, but now I'm back and I have two amazing women with me here today. So whoever wants to go first, introduce yourself, say who you are, what you do, blah, blah, blah.
Hi, I'm Maggie Latham. I am a senior in college. I major in TV production and cinema. I love movies. I love TV. I've worked in many aspects of both, and I'm just really excited to be here with these wonderful ladies talking about some wonderful ladies. So yeah.
Ooh.
Oh, okay, my turn.
Yes.
I'm KADY Wright, and actually my brother is Zach, and he's on the podcast. And I really want to be on it, so he let me join. And also I just have one thing to say. He edits the podcast, and he told me that I couldn't cuss, so you, Zach.
I love this already. So, because there are no men here, and Maggie kind of already talked about it, we are going to talk about influential women in TV shows and or movies. And I'm just really excited because this is actually an interesting episode. Not to say that their episodes haven't been interesting. But
No, they suck. I give all of them 1 star.
I think this could help with their audience. I don't know. I just tweak things.
Put some estrogen in this podcast.
There we go. Okay, so we all kind of chose 3 different characters that we wanted to talk about. We're going to be talking about the characters themselves, not so much the actresses that play them. And they kind of have a broad range of things. So, like mine are all from, they're actually all Disney characters, but like animated series. And then KADY and Maggie's are more about like drama and comedies. There we go. Thank you. So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today. So hopefully you can listen in, like what you hear, and also comment on some influential female characters that you like to watch on TV or in movies.
Or anyone we missed.
Yes, because there was a long one. This was very hard to choose.
Yeah.
Very, very hard. A lot of bad-ass women.
Yes.
Another curse word for Zach. I feel like every time now we cuss, so it's just going to be like, Zach.
Bleep.
All right, who wants to start?
I guess I can.
Yes,
I will
ma'am.
start.
This was also KADY's idea for an episode for the podcast, so I
Yes,
think
ma'am.
it's right for you to start.
Yes, I just wanted to be included, and I figured I could go in
All
there.
women in the media industry.
I just want to be appreciated. So my first influential female character is Brooke Davis from One Tree Hill. I started watching One Tree Hill, I think I was probably still in middle school. I'm only 19. And
I thought of the Hamilton lyric. I'm sorry, continue.
Only 19, but my mind is older.
But I just think, I mean, she started out, she was terrible.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not that it's a bad thing, but she slept around. She didn't have her own personality. She was just revolved her life around boys. And she had a terrible upbringing. Her parents were awful. But then she started her own company when she was, in high school?
Mm-hmm.
And really reinvented herself to be her own person. Whereas, like, she started out just revolving her life around boys.
Mm-hmm.
And Sophia Bush is just an amazing person in real life, too. So.
And her whole first storyline in One Tree Hill, just bouncing off, like, one of her bigger storylines was, like, her love triangle.
Yeah.
And that was, like, what a lot of people focused on for a really long time. So it was really cool to see her progression of, like, that being such a huge plot point. And it was, like, one of those main TV, like, like, Chad Michael Murray was, the dream of
Cinderella story.
Literally, of the early 2000s. And so her And Peyton in that whole storyline
Right.
was so toxic and just not good for women on TV. So her story is really dope to see her character have really great development into what she was in her younger adult life.
Well, and she wasn't in the pilot episode, but then was in every single episode after that. She was the only person I think to be in every episode besides the pilot.
Interesting.
That stayed along.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah.
Wow.
I read that on like Internet Movie Database.
The more you know.
I always, after I watch TV shows, I have to go read it.
Of course.
Like I have to go read about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like the goofs and things like that on Internet Movie Database. Have to.
I've never watched One Tree Hill. Like I've watched my old roommate Jenna, she watched it a couple times and like I was just kind of tuning in. So I don't remember who's who.
Brooke is darker hair.
Okay.
She was one of the girls with Chad Michael Murray at one point in the show.
Okay.
That's what a lot of people remember her as, because that was one of
She was the captain of the cheer team.
Mm-hmm.
She drank and partied, and she was wild.
She was
then like
I remember like watching that at a very too young of an age, as I shouldn't. And I remember just being like, "Whoa, is this what high school is like?" And I was like, I wanted to be her. She was so like When
she was so broken inside. That, like, I always remember the quote when she's, like, looking in the mirror. And she's like, why can't you be the girl who gets the boy and the baby, Brooke Davis? And it's just like, oh. And then she gets the boy and the baby.
Mm-hmm. But also on her own terms, too. Right. She becomes, like, a baddie. And she just becomes, She really, it shows the growth of, like, a teenager into a woman.
Right, exactly.
And, like, how women can, like, you can go through that and learn from it and grow from it.
Well, I think a lot of women do. Mm-hmm. They struggle to find who they are themselves. Yes, 100%. So they throw themselves into boys and just become the boy instead of becoming their own person.
Yeah.
And I think Brooke became her own person in that way.
Dope like development and following of that.
For sure.
Because a lot of TV shows, they'll keep it that way. Like they'll make the girl like still become kind of a baddie, but then she'll always still kind of be connected to a male character.
To her past.
And it's like, but with her, they did a really good job of kind of making her multifaceted and growing as herself.
I think one last thing about the whole One Tree Hill show was their creator he was like assaulting them on set. And was like,
really?
Yeah.
And I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was like groping them, and it was like, yes. It was crazy. And they all came out, and the whole cast stood behind all the women that were like assaulted by him. And I think he lost his job. He was working on some show, and I think he lost it, and everyone like kind of drug his name through the mud because it deserved to be.
Oh yeah.
But she was one of the people who kind of stuck up for it and was tired being messed with by him.
Yeah. So that's crazy. I didn't even know that. Wow. And One Tree Hill was like that show. I mean, like we have our teen dramas we kind of like had. I don't know like how much but like Gossip Girl was kind of our era, and like but that was a little bit later. One Tree Hill was very early.
Yeah,
2000s.
I think it ended in like 2013.
It ended like right after the CW stopped being like the WB too.
Yeah,
that's how you can also recognize it.
That's what they used to be. I was like, what were they? Oh my god!
Like it was one of the few shows that like survived that transition and also was like able to like still succeed after it. So, but yeah, that's crazy. I didn't even know that happened.
Yeah.
Wow. I think like I didn't really watch a lot of like teen dramas, partly because my parents didn't really let me. And I kind of had to watch them like secretly on the side. So The Fosters was kind of my first one.
Oh, yeah.
I used to watch that with my mom.
And then I watched Twisted too. You
guys
remember that
wow. With Ava and Joe. Yeah. It only had one season.
It was so good.
It was so good.
But then also, I think like the next one that I really started to watch was Glee.
Oh my
God.
Yeah.
I remember my mom watched Glee, and like.
So did my mom.
I feel like I remember like getting made fun of for watching Glee. Like I don't remember, but I feel like I did. I'm not sure.
I felt like
it's a repressed memory.
Yeah, Glee was one of those things, and I actually have a character on my list from Glee that later we'll talk about. But Glee was one of those things like in retrospect, it was really cringy, but at the time it was very much like groundbreaking. It won Emmys, it won Golden Globes. It was really and at the time it was one of the most diverse shows on TV. Now we look back and realize it was a lot of tropes and a lot of like stereotypes, which isn't great, but like at the time it was also about
high school. I mean,
a lot of high school tropes, and so I think like it's one of those things like retrospectively you look back on and it's like it's kind of cringy now, but like at the time it was like And I feel like One Tree Hill is one of those few shows that's like, okay, you can look back on it and it's not super cringy. Like
No.
it's of its time.
It's the early 2000s cringe, but
Mhm.
It's like the
that's not a
low-rise
bad
jeans
cringe.
are terrible.
Yes.
But like the storyline
It's
sticks.
still there. Yeah, it's still really, really good.
Okay, so before we hit our break, Maggie, do you want to talk about your Glee character right now, or do you want to wait?
I can go ahead and talk about our
Okay.
my Glee character since we are here.
Yes.
Since we're talking about Glee and those kind of tropes in high school, things like that. Yeah, this is Santana Lopez from
Yes.
Glee, played by the wonderful late Naya Rivera. I almost didn't want to pick. Yeah, I almost didn't want to pick this because it's kind of sad to think about now, but I think it's also important, like, for her legacy to continue talking about her.
Yes.
And Santana Lopez was Mexican American teenager. She was the captain of the cheerleading. Well, she was one of the, like, they were. I think
The
they were all.
unholy trinity.
They were all
Yes.
captains at one point.
Yes.
It was a very.
Then they all quit at the
And
same
then,
time.
yeah, it
yes.
was very,
Yeah.
but she was in the Glee club and she was one of the characters in Glee, and she came out in season 3, I think it was, as bisexual, and that was a really big deal at the time. They had dealt with the gay character, like one of the male gay characters coming out in early season 1, but they really hadn't tackled female sexuality, and she was the first character to really, they dived into it, and her dealing with her sexuality as Latina and dealing with it just in her life. And I think it was one of the things that Glee actually handled pretty decently.
I thought so too.
Yeah.
And I think her character, she was so multifaceted, and it wasn't like she was in the original, I think, like season 2, when they first made her like a recurring character, they kind of were just made her like this angry, like, Mexican woman, which isn't great.
Right.
And then I think like they kind of delved into it more, and like she really has this beautiful monologue, and she was just mad at the world, and she was mad she couldn't be herself. And seeing that growing up was very beneficial to me. As I was a bisexual girl who was like dealing with her sexuality, and to see it on screen portrayed really well. And she has amazing support, but she also gets rejected by her grandmother. You know, it's still very.
I remember that.
Yeah, and it's heartbreaking. It's so heartbreaking. And I think one of my favorite quotes from her is like, it's just like, I have to just be me. And it's just like, it's like this feeling of defeat. And I think it was a beautiful thing to see this strong woman deal with her sexuality, go through like the ups and downs of it, and still come out on the other side of just like happy to be herself and to be who she was. And so, yeah, I think that was one of the best things Glee did. And I think Naya Rivera portrayed that character beautifully. And
I think so too.
And she did a lot for the LGBTQ community outside of the show and within the show. And she won a lot of GLAAD awards for Santana. And also, like, I'm not a woman of color. None of us are in this room. But I think also, you know, a lot of the responses from, you know, the Latinx community for her was very positive, because it was like seeing somebody on screen that was strong and multifaceted and had all these layers to her, not just being like an angry Mexican woman, you know?
Right.
So.
And I think that was really good too. Like, something that I've kind of noticed with the TV shows and movies that we started to grow up with is that they're showing more representation. So like, even if you are not part of the LGBT community or the people of color community, like, you can at least become aware of the like situations and issues that they face in the world. And then that actually helps us become more empathetic towards them. So like how you identify with Santana as a bisexual woman trying to figure out your bisexuality, like me, like I'm straight and I'm cisgender. Like I am very privileged, but like I could also see how that would be difficult to figure out kind of who you are, and like being accepted into, like, maybe you don't necessarily relate to the LGBT community. Maybe like they haven't really accepted you. I know that, like, I've seen that's been kind of like an issue too, especially with like bisexual, it's like mixed race people too. Like, am I too white? Like, I'm too black for the white community, but I'm too black, like I'm too white for the black community, like thing like that. I think I said that right. Or like, you know, I'm too straight for the gay community, but I'm too gay for the straight community type of thing. So I think like that's something cool that TV shows are now starting to recognize and actually put into their shows and their movies, just to show like recognition and show representation. And I think Santana was like very like groundbreaking for that too, because she was like one of the very first LGBT characters that I saw, actually like LGBT women that I saw like on the screen. And
that was another huge thing. Like I mentioned, they had dealt with Kurt's sexuality in the very early seasons of him being gay. And so I had never seen a gay, like a proud, like LGBTQ woman on screen. And so it was crazy for me to see. And I didn't know I was bi at the time, but I think I knew like deep down. And I remember for Christmas, there's a Born This Way episode where she wants to write like lesbian across, but her girlfriend makes it and her girlfriend's not that smart. So she writes Lebanese. And I
was so confused. Me and my mom watched that episode and we were like, oh, maybe she's just like ashamed of being Lebanese. We had no clue. And then we watched
eventually
the episode
realized.
and we were like, oh, wait.
Yeah. And so I was like, oh, and I asked for that for Christmas. I asked for the Lebanese shirt for Christmas. I should have known. And my dad bought it for me. Luckily, I mean, they were super supportive. My parents were pretty cool about that kind of stuff. But like, yeah, so it was just so like I didn't even realize at the time. But now I look back and I'm like, oh, that's why she was my favorite character, because she was bi and I was bi and I didn't know yet. And so
relation.
Literally, so
I think a thing
beautiful
with
thing.
Santana too was people weren't suspicious that she was.
Mhm.
It was no one thought that she was going to turn out to be bisexual. Whereas like you saw Kurt and you were like, okay, well, like, yeah, like that makes sense. And if people, I think there's a lot of people like Santana, and I think that's why she was so mean at the beginning, because she was kind of quote unquote the I mean, people did not, she had her friends, she was popular, but I think she was hiding so much pain in her that she wasn't herself. She was with these guys who didn't love her because she didn't love them either. And I think that's a lot for women now to see that, oh, maybe I do feel the same. I mean, but I feel the same way as Santana does, so she can come out, so can I.
Right.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, and with that, we will take a short break and we'll be right back.
Looking for a spot to advertise your business, product, or service? You can have a personalized ad right here on Committed Critics. Email us at committedcritics@gmail.com for more info.
Welcome back to this special episode of Committed Critics, where we are talking about influential women in TV and movies. Jordan Smearman here again with Maggie Latham and KADY Wright. No boys this episode because we can.
No boys allowed.
There's
Because
a
we
female
killed
vice
them.
president now. We can do these
Woo!
We've actually taken over.
We stand Mama Love.
things. So, before the break, we talked about Brooke Davis, and we also talked about Santana Lopez. And those were the characters Maggie and KADY chose. Now it's my turn. So I chose all different Disney characters. I didn't mean it to just be Disney, but these were very influential, kind of like animated girls that I thought like we definitely grew up with and stuff. So the first one I'm going to talk about, actually I did it in chronological order of the movies coming out. I didn't realize that. So the first one I want to talk about is Mulan. So Mulan, we're talking about the animated version, not the live action version. I haven't seen the live action. I'm not going to, no. So
It's free now on Disney Plus.
it is free now. I don't have to pay $30.
That's bold. Sorry.
So with Mulan, I thought it was a little bit different. Like it was things about like, it was strong women characters, right? That we didn't even realize. Cause like you think about like previous Disney princesses, they were all like bashing on each other. Like if you think about Cinderella, like the stepmom and the stepsisters were just like shitting on her and just being like she was her like their slave, and then like just got a prince and then her life was better. Like everything had to be
If it was that easy.
yeah, I know, right? It's like you just have to find your prince and your life will be immediately better. But what I liked about Mulan was that she wasn't planning on doing that. She was just trying to save her dad from going back into the war. And not to mention, I put this in all caps in my notes, she literally saved China.
She saved China.
She saved China.
She did that.
A
And
whole
she
ass
did
country.
that.
And another thing that I really like too, that I was kind of thinking about as I was writing my notes for this, is that she didn't conform to Chinese beauty standards and traditions. So that very first like opening, like she just put the makeup on and she meets with the matchmaker because she's just trying to find her perfect match, because women can't do anything. They just need to get married and have kids or whatever. And she didn't conform to it. She realized that wasn't her. And then you got the beautiful reflection song, which we love that.
It does bother me though with the whole reflection song. It's a beautiful song.
Right.
But when they came out with it on Disney Channel, Christina Aguilera sang it, who's a white female. They could not have someone who's like from Asia.
Right. Yeah. They didn't have, it was just, they didn't have Asian descent.
Yeah.
Yes. Asian descent. There we go. So that was just a thing that I like too. And the traditions too, like men were the ones to go off and fight in the war. Women stayed home. Like she said, no, like you. Sorry, Zach. But was just like, screw you. Like, I can go and fight in this war too. And she trained and proved that she could fight with the men. Like, she showed them up.
Period.
Because another thing I said was that she worked smarter and harder. Like, if you think about how
most women have to.
Yeah, you're right. Like,
especially women of
color.
Yes, of course. But like how the arrow up on the totem pole or like the pole, and like she used the metals to actually like get up there and use it, where all the other men were just like trying to climb up with them, like holding down. Like, she worked smarter, and she was able to prove herself. And she was like with the water buckets too. They were all like, "Oh, this weakling, like she can't, like he couldn't do this," because she's portrayed as a he right now. But then she shows up and she's like again, screw you, I can do these things. And it was just so cool to see that. And like, sure, we didn't really recognize that when we were younger, because we were just like, oh, like pretty colors, and like, oh, there's Mushu the dragon, he's cool, and like, this is kind of funny. But then you like look back at it and you're like, wow, this is actually kind of like a powerful message compared to what Disney released before that for young, like, little girls and stuff like that. Like, Mulan was a little bit, it was different, it was changing things.
Yeah.
I think with Mulan too is like, I mean, I remember watching Mulan when I was younger, and I did not sit there and think, wow, she's Asian and on TV.
Right.
It was like, I think you could have raised your children that way, and to be like, well, when you see someone that's different, why does it matter? Everyone should be embraced for who they are. But I think growing up, kids nowadays are like, oh wow, they look like me. Yeah. Whereas like when I watched it as a white female, was like, oh, this is cool. Yeah. It didn't have anything to do with her being Asian.
I remember the first time I realized that was I was talking to one of my friends who was she's of mixed race, and we were all talking about like one film had to go, and everyone was talking about Aladdin, and everyone was like, oh yeah, like we were choosing between a bunch of Disney films, and someone was like, oh yeah, Aladdin, like that's obviously it. And she was like, no, I can't pick Aladdin because that was the first time I saw a woman of color on screen in a Disney movie with Jasmine. So it's so important, that representation. And also about Mulan, I think what's awesome is like, it really shows her, like, she was there for she did all these super amazing things and saved China, but at the end of the day, she wasn't trying to be this super feminist fighting icon. She was truly just trying to save her family. Right. And I think that's so dope. But like, as a message of a film, it's like, she's a super badass, but like also like, she was just trying to be there for her loved one. So super cool. Yeah, Mulan's dope.
All right. Well, Zach just came in and told us we only have 10 minutes left, so we have to do kind of a speed round of our other two remaining characters in each of our categories, and here we go. KADY.
All right. My last two are Hermione Granger from Harry Potter,
of course,
and Leslie Knope from Parks and Recreation.
Yes.
Period.
Hermione, because I think she was probably one of the first female characters that I saw on TV. Because my mom loved Harry Potter. I really wasn't into it. I didn't get into it till about high school. But she was cool, and she was smart, and she punched Draco, and that was awesome.
Yeah. Harry and Ron would have died if they did not have Hermione.
Literally.
She was like one of the first girls I saw, like, she was smarter than the boys. Yeah. She could smoke them. Yeah.
And then Leslie Knope, because nothing could bring her down.
No.
Her town turned their backs on her, and she's like, I'm still gonna be on city council.
Get on your feet. Get up and make it happen. Period.
And Ben stayed for her. She didn't go where Ben wanted to go. He came to Pawnee and lived with her in Podunk, Indiana.
Period. Yeah, Leslie is one of like the biggest rays of sunshine in television.
I know.
And by Amy Poehler, and it was written by Amy Poehler and produced by Amy Poehler. Like, such a powerhouse.
Rashida Jones was in there too, and she's a woman of color.
Beautiful. Yeah. It was a beautifully diverse cast, not because like they were trying to be diverse.
Aziz Ansari.
Yeah. And just beautiful. Rita. Yes, like dope. Leslie's amazing. I want to be her when I grow up.
When I first started watching Parks and Rec, because I didn't watch it until over quarantine, and I binged the entire season right before it left Netflix. R.I.P. But like, I identified with Leslie so much because I was like, I'm just trying to work hard, and like nothing can drag me down anymore. Like, I'm just gonna keep pushing forward and hopefully love what I do. Like, my goal in life is to be as happy as Leslie Knope doing government work. Like, I want to do that with my job. Just be able to like go in every day.
She was like the real life SpongeBob.
Yes.
It was like no one can bring her down.
Yes, I love it.
All right, Maggie, what are your two?
So my last two, my first one is Olive Pendergast from Easy A. And I picked her because I felt like that was one of the first coming of age films I felt for my generation.
Mhm.
Like that and like Perks of Being a Wallflower and like that era of film.
I told
was like,
myself I was gonna watch that movie. I have never.
You
seen
need
it.
to. It's beautiful.
I saw it
It'll change your
on
life.
TikTok.
It's
We will
beautiful.
watch it.
But
I will cry.
like I felt like our coming of age films were always like our 80s like John Hughes movies, and
Yes.
those are great, but they don't really deal with our current issues.
No.
And Easy A was one of the first films I saw at a good age that reminded me of like what slut shaming was and what a woman's sexual history and how those things are talked about in our society. And it's a great commentary on early 2010 society. And just Olive is a real character. She's an awkward 17-year-old girl, and she just likes Penn Badgley, and she just wants to date him, and she's awkward around him. And that's a B plot in the film also. Like her story of coming to terms with her like fake sexual history, you know, and what people are talking about is so much more important. And it's great commentary of like, it's nobody's, like at the end of the film, she's like, I could have sex with this boy tonight or tomorrow night or 5 minutes from now. But the good part is it's nobody's goddamn business.
Yes.
And that is just always what I've taken away from it. And also the parents,
when they're like, "You're adopted? Who told you?"
one of the best parts of early 2010 cinema. So I just love Olive, and I just like her comedy is unmatched, and Emma Stone is just iconic. So. And it's influenced, and it's so ingrained in our culture. Like everyone knows those jokes. It's such a good movie. So underrated, in my opinion.
I need to rewatch it.
Well, and it's funny. It's not super serious where it's like, oh, this is kind of okay. I get the message. No, it's funny. You want to watch it.
It's a great film with like great message, but also, but it's not rubbing it in your face.
Right.
It's beautiful. I watch that movie whenever I'm sad. That's like one of my comfort movies.
I love
so
it.
one of my comfort movies. And then my second character was Christina Yang from Grey's Anatomy. I love Sandra Oh. Christina Yang is Grey's Anatomy has turned into a little bit of
it's a little wild now.
20 years later, you know, but in the early like seasons 1 through like 8, Christina Yang
1 through 2
was like my favorite. Christina was my favorite character because I feel like Shonda Rhimes presented her as this woman that was like, I just want a career over love. And then she got love and she experienced those things. And it kind of wasn't more of a question of like, can women have it all? Do women want to have it all?
Right.
Everyone always asks, well, can she have it all? Can she go to work and have a career and have a husband and kids? Does she want it?
Right.
And I felt like that's what Christina Yang's story is about. Like, does she even want to have it all, or does she just want her career? And is that okay?
Well, is that all to her?
Exactly. That's her all. And so I think it's beautiful, her storyline. And she goes through so many dark periods. I mean, she stopped surgery for a while. Like she's not, after the shooting, like she has PTSD. She goes through all these ups and downs, and she leaves the show essentially in her story to go work for something way better, way more deserving of her. And like one of her last lines, she says to Meredith about Meredith's relationship with McDreamy is, he's very dreamy, but he is not the son you are. And I think that's such a beautiful.
I like that.
That's my favorite. That's one of my,
so good.
One of my favorite quotes of television is just that, because it's like, you know, you are your own person. You are your own center of your own universe. So yeah, Christina Yang, I will die for her.
And I think Christina Yang, one major part of Christina Yang was when she was with Owen when she got pregnant. And she didn't want to have kids. She didn't. And she ultimately had an abortion. And she was okay with that.
Yeah.
She did not want to be a mom. She wanted to be a surgeon. And that.
Yeah.
And a successful one.
And she stayed her own person. She never lost her eye on her own goals in her life, which I thought was beautiful.
But another character that made me think of was Paula from Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. So it's a really good show. I love it.
I've seen a few episodes.
Yeah, so there's the main character, but then there's her best friend Paula, and Paula's studying to be a lawyer. She's a paralegal, and she's like older. She has 2 like teenage sons. And then she ends up finding out that she's pregnant, and she decides to get an abortion because she's like, I have 2 sons already, and I want to be a lawyer. This baby will stop me, or this fetus will like stop me and like from achieving my dreams.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was so powerful, because like Crazy Ex-Girlfriend was one of those shows that really, to me, showed more women's issues and also mental health issues too. Like that was something they really took seriously, and also women's sexuality things, because Rebecca, the main character, like she slept with multiple other guys in her in the series, and it was just so powerful to kind of see that and see women kind of taking charge of their lives, which actually is a good tie-in to my other characters.
Yes, ma'am.
So the other one that I chose was Tiana from Princess and the Frog. Princess and the Frog is probably one of my all-time favorite Disney movies. I absolutely love it, and I love her because she does not want a man. She is all about getting this restaurant for her dad and like in her dad's honor. And she's like, this is my dream. This is my passion. And she just works her butt off to do this.
Yeah.
But then everyone's doubting her because it's like, when she's at the ball and the real estate agents are like, a woman of your like background probably can't do this. And it's just like, are you saying
Racist.
that? Right. Like
Yeah.
racist, that's sexist. And it's just like, you can't like, it's just amazing to her that she's kind of like, you know what, watch me. And like, and her dream was just to make something of herself and not using a man to get there. Does she find love in the end? Yeah, she does. But then she kind of realizes
And that's
that,
great.
right. She saw
But you don't need it.
no,
Mhm.
yeah, she saw the importance of love and community because that's the one thing she was like, when she's talking to the villain, she's like, my dad never got what he wanted, but he had what he needed. He had love.
Mhm.
And she's like, remembered like just the community, that community aspect. He had the love of his neighbors and his daughter and his wife. And she was like, that's what he needed.
Yeah.
And that's what she wanted too. She's like, I want love. I want that sense of community. And that's what I want in my restaurant. And she also still worked for what she wanted. Yeah, she married Naveen at the end, but then they opened up the restaurant anyways. And she got her dream. So I just thought that was amazing. And then my other character was Moana.
Queen.
We love Moana too.
Literally.
Literally.
But there was no love interest for Moana.
Yeah.
That's what I thought was so interesting. Like Frozen,
Just a girl and her rooster.
Just a girl in the water.
Just a girl in the water.
girl in the ocean. She just really wanted what was best for her people. Like she wanted what was best for her people. And also she used understanding for figuring out Tafiti. Like if you think about it, all the guys, like Maui was just choosing violence. He woke up and chose violence
Every single day.
And Moana was kind of like Mulan. She's like, no, think hard, like think smarter, not harder. And she just kind of like used understanding and was like, oh, I understand. You're actually Tafiti, like Taka's Tafiti, and you want your heart back. Like, girl,
Yeah.
I get that.
Well, and you didn't see any other men jumping into the water to
Right,
save
yeah.
save the
And she
town.
like I said, she could prove she could handle herself too, and she was just outsmarting opponents.
She was
too,
like
especially with the
15.
craft.
Yeah.
Yeah, a great commentary about peace too, and
Yeah.
about like love, and about like the way we handle situations, and also I think a beautiful commentary of like people are like women can't lead and women can't do these things because like Mulan proves like women can do anything a man can do,
Right.
just better. But I think Moana also proves women can do anything men can't do because sometimes women have their own things they bring to the table
Right.
that we don't even talk about, like women, the way
Mhm.
women think and the way they think a little bit more compassionately and
Mm-hmm.
think of like, oh,
If there were less penises in the world, there would be a whole lot more empathy.
oh, for
Yes,
sure,
100%.
for sure. I mean, it's just proven, and it's like you can call it maternal, whatever,
Mhm.
but it's a natural instinct of women to like
Or it's just like being a good person.
that too,
Right,
yeah,
not having
yeah,
toxic masculinity.
literally.
That was my whole issue with like the whole like female president debate. Like a woman can't be president because she'll get on her period and want to drop nukes. And I was like, did you see the crybaby that just left office? Like,
literally.
you can't never tell me that a
They
woman
took
can't be
Twitter
president.
away from them.
Right. They took every social media platform away
You
from
say
Donald Trump.
a
And-
woman
You know what
can't
you have to
have-
do to get Twitter to take you down. And I'm more mad that it was like not 3 years ago when was hitting the
Really?
fan.
right.
But no, Moana shows that like
Mhm.
sometimes being a woman and having a little bit more of that sensitivity and open emotional canal that a lot of
Mhm.
men have had closed off, unfortunately, sometimes due to society.
Yes.
Having that is like sometimes 10 times better than a man with muscles.
Mhm.
Which
Right.
is so dope.
And I think that's a good message too for boys or like
Mhm.
younger boys and stuff, that like they can see women are just as strong as them and they can understand like more empathy
Mhm.
things, and maybe that will kind of change their perspective on things
Have
too.
you noticed in the past like 10 years, like besides like there hasn't been like a boy led, like besides Coco, like a boy led
You're
Disney
right.
movie.
Didn't, wasn't there? What was the
There
one
was
that just came
Onward.
out?
There was
Soul?
Onward, but they weren't. Well, there
Oh,
was Soul, but that was. I mean, that was also beautiful representation for the African American community.
Right, yeah.
Like in
And kind of Wreck-It Ralph, but then
kind of Wreck-It
But
Ralph,
wasn't
but not.
Penelope like
But if you look
Yeah.
at like what women have had, which I think is kind of beautiful to point
Mhm.
out, like I think it's important for boys to see representation of themselves, growing
Right.
up and whatnot.
but there's so
And-
much of that.
But exactly, there's so much of it, and I think the films that Disney and Pixar are kind of coming out with now are kind of shifting to these stories that need to be told that have women at the forefront. I mean,
Mhm.
so many films that have women at the forefront, and so many films like even if it is a film like Coco, it's still trying to focus on Hispanic heritage, and it's way more than just a boy doing
Right.
things. And with Soul, it's a lot more than just a man doing something. It's a
Mhm.
black man going through his life and
Right.
dealing with things, and yeah, so I think that's really dope that you had
Mhm.
those Disney, because that made me realize I'm like, dang, in the last like 20 years, Disney's kind of
They're popping off.
They're kind of. I mean, it's probably just for money, but I will take it. It's a cash cow.
I
for
mean,
them.
I know, but they're one of the
too.
biggest like media conglomerates. They need to show representation because then other media conglomerates will be like, "Oh, this is making Disney money. Maybe
This is
we
gonna
should
make
show,
me money."
Yeah, maybe we
Mhm.
should show some representation," which is a little messed up.
It's like
but also it's getting
the word out there.
At least
getting the
it's-
word out
Their
there.
heart's in the right place.
it's a stepping stone.
Yes,
I think too it helps men who are raising daughters
yes,
to see, oh, well, maybe my daughter, not that they don't think their daughters can do things, but they're like, well, if that woman can do it, my daughter's going to see that she can do it.
Mhm.
Whereas, like, I can't represent that to her, but this movie's going to help her figure it out.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow, so many powerful women.
Yes.
And I know there's so many more that we could have talked about. Like
Tons.
I changed mine last minute. I was going to talk about female superheroes. I started
Mhm.
thinking about like dystopian female leads, like
Oh.
Katniss Everdeen,
Yes.
and then Triss from Divergent. Like
Oh.
I thought about
Good
all
one.
of those. Like we could talk about Handmaid's Tale. There are so many influential female characters now.
Yeah.
Like it was a little like it's kind of hard to think about. Like Maggie, like we were talking about beforehand, like it's kind of sucks that there aren't more women of color being represented.
Yeah.
And there weren't actually a lot of like, I mean, besides what you said, Olivia
Yeah,
Pope
it was literally
and-
like Olivia Pope, and then you have Viola Davis in How to Get Away with Murder, and that's
Yeah.
like on mainstream TV. That's like
Mhm.
it. I mean, you have Issa Rae in Insecure, and you
Mhm.
have Broad
Zendaya.
City. You have Zendaya. You have Broad City, which is a little bit more representation, but literally, I mean, it's like it's really. I hope TV starts moving a little bit more. They've done a
Mhm.
lot for women, but now it's like okay, you've done a lot for white women. So
I
that's-
think women of color, too, get portrayed as stereotypes.
Oh,
Yes.
Like we were saying about Zendaya
Mhm.
in Euphoria. I mean, she's addicted to drugs.
Mhm.
And that's a stereotype that follows around African Americans,
Mhm.
which is wrong, but
yeah.
that's the
That's
sad
what
truth.
you'll see a lot about if you
Right.
study women of color in
Mhm.
media. You'll see that they fall into a pigeonhole, which is really unfortunate.
Yes.
So hopefully
Hopefully.
we can change
Yeah. This podcast is all just an add to media industries
that.
to make more influential female characters.
Period.
Of color.
Of
And
color.
especially of color and LGBT community
Mhm.
and anything else. Just make things that have more women.
We've seen
Saoirse Ronan, women.
women.
just embrace that.
Mhm.
But yeah, this has been another episode of Committed Critics. Thank you all for coming to this. I don't really remember
Thank
their
you.
outro, but I know it's something about Twitter. They have a Twitter. They have a YouTube.
Follow
They-
us on Twitter.
Yeah, you can
Follow
follow
us on
KADY and Maggie both on Twitter. They will be featured in the descriptions for this. They're also on Spotify. Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube are all Committed Critics. That's COMITTEDCRITS. It's Committed Crits.
My dyslexia. could
Yeah.
never.
I was like, wait a second. But yeah, so thank you all so much for listening. Please let the guys know, since this is more of their podcast and we're just featured. But if you want to hear more influential women talk about even influential women or other things, let them know. We'd love to have you all back. I would
Period.
love to talk to you guys more about these things.
And comment if we skipped anyone.
Yeah, comment
that
your
you
Like
like.
some people.
Yeah, the influential
miss a
female
lot,
characters that
probably.
you
Yeah.
saw, that you embrace and that you love. Because like we said, there are so many, thankfully. Nowadays there are so many. So yeah, thank you all so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.